Look down at what you're wearing right now. A shirt, pants, maybe shoes, maybe a jacket. You put them on this morning without thinking. The way you brush your teeth, the way you lock the door, just another thing you do. So automatic, so ordinary, that you have probably never once stopped to ask the question underneath it. Why? Not why did you get dressed today? Why does any human get dressed at all? The obvious answer is warmth, protection, modesty. But those answers are wrong, or at least they are nowhere near the full story. Because the real origin of clothing doesn't start with cold weather. It doesn't start with shame. It doesn't start with anything you were taught in school. It starts in a cave in Croatia with a Neanderthal and a piece of animal hide and a set of teeth, marks that scientists found 130,000 years after the fact. And once you understand what actually happened, you will never look at a piece of clothing the same way again. In 1899, archaeologists began excavating a cave called Krapina in what is now Croatia. The site had been inhabited for a long time, bones everywhere, tools, ash from ancient fires. The usual evidence of lives lived and ended in a dark hole in the earth. Inside, they found Neanderthal bones from individuals who had died roughly 130,000 years ago. But it was what they found on the teeth that changed everything. The front teeth of one Neanderthal had a series of tiny diagonal scratch marks running across them, faint, deliberate, repeated in the same direction, over and over, like something that had happened hundreds of times during that person's life. For decades, nobody could explain them. Researchers proposed theories. Maybe it was a strange chewing habit, maybe some kind of ritual, maybe damage from tools held too close to the face. None of the explanations fully fit. Then in 2015, a team of researchers finally figured it out. The Neanderthal had been cleaning an animal hide, processing it, scraping it, working it, softening it so it could be worn as clothing. They bit down on one edge of the hide to hold it steady. They pulled the other end tight with one hand, and with the other hand, they scraped the surface clean with a sharp stone tool. Sometimes the stone slipped, and when it did, the edge caught the front teeth. Over years and years of the same work, those tiny accidental grazes added up into a pattern, a signature, a record. Those scratch marks, those small, unintentional injuries from 130,000 years ago, are the oldest direct evidence of clothing making ever found on Earth. Not drawn, not carved, not written down. Just a set of teeth marks on a dead person's skull, sitting in Croatian soil for 130,000 years, waiting for someone to understand what they meant. Your ancestors were making clothes before they were anatomically modern humans, before language as we know it existed, before art, before farming, before every single thing we point to when we talk about civilization. The urge to cover the body is that old. Older, maybe, than we can fully imagine. Here is what most people assume when they think about the origin of clothing. Early humans got cold. They killed an animal. They wrapped the skin around their shoulders. Problem solved. It is a clean story. Logical. Satisfying. But there is a problem with it. Homo sapiens, your species, did not evolve in the cold. We evolved in Africa, in heat. In open savanna grasslands where temperatures regularly reached 40 degrees Celsius and shade was something you fought over. For the vast majority of human prehistory, the climate our ancestors lived in was warm, sometimes punishingly warm. So why were humans making and wearing clothing in conditions where warmth was the last thing anyone needed? The answer, strangely, comes from lice. In 2003, a geneticist named Mark Stoneking published a study that approached the question of clothing from a completely unexpected direction. Instead of looking at bones or tools or cave paintings, he looked at parasites. Specifically, he looked at human body lice. Body lice are different from head lice in one critical way. Head lice live in hair. Body lice cannot. Body lice need fabric, the weave of a garment, the fold of a sleeve to survive and reproduce. Without clothing, body lice go extinct within a generation. Which means body lice, as a species, could not have existed before clothing existed. Stoneking's team used genetic sequencing to trace back the moment when body lice first diverged from head lice. The moment when a population of head lice adapted to a new environment cloth and became something new. The answer came back. Approximately 170,000 years ago. 170,000 years ago, somewhere in Africa, humans were wearing clothing consistently enough, regularly enough, for a brand new species of parasite to evolve specifically to live in it. Not occasionally, Not just when it was cold, regularly, as a habit, as a daily practice. 170,000 years ago, in Africa, in the heat. This was not about warmth. Something much deeper was driving it. To understand what was actually happening, you have to look at what clothing does beyond temperature. Clothing signals. It always has. Every culture in human history, on every continent, in every climate, across every era we have any record of, has developed some form of body covering or decoration. Anthropologists have documented this across hundreds of societies. There is not a single known exception. Not one human group, anywhere, at any point in recorded or archaeological history, that had absolutely no form of adornment or covering whatsoever. Even in the tropics, where heat made fabric genuinely uncomfortable, people painted their skin with pigment, wore shells around their necks, wrapped strips of bark around their waists, decorated themselves with feathers and carved bone and flowers. And here is the thing that is genuinely strange about that. No other animal does this. Not one. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, sharing 98% of our DNA, do not decorate themselves. They do not wrap leaves around their bodies to signal their rank in the group. They do not wear a particular arrangement of sticks to show they are a leader. They do not put on something different when they want to be taken seriously. But every human society that has ever existed does some version of all of those things. Because clothing is not just about the body. It never was. It is about identity. It is about belonging. It is about status and mourning and celebration and belief. It is about telling the world and yourself who you are and what you are part of. Anthropologist Ian Gilligan spent decades studying the origins of clothing across dozens of prehistoric sites on multiple continents. His conclusion, after all of that research, was that the first function of clothing was almost certainly social before it was thermal. That the impulse to mark the body to separate your group from other groups, to signal your role within your own group, to make yourself recognizable, came first. Survival from cold came later, as humans migrated into harsher climates, and the social tool became a thermal one as well. The warmth came later. The identity came first. The first piece of clothing ever made was not a coat. It was a statement. But here is the question that remains. If clothing started as identity, as signal, as belonging, then how did our ancestors actually make it? What did it take, in a world with no tools, no machines, no fabric stores, to turn a dead animal into something you could wear? The answer to that is where this story gets truly extraordinary. And that is where we will pick up next time.